First, Suzanne Eggert repeats her claim that John Andrews had told her repeatedly that he would like to kill Starkey Swinson.
What a way to win over a new girlfriend.
Yeah, it's not the way that I'd try to win over a girl, that's for sure. Claire Andrews also essentially sticks to her initial story. She does mention that John Andrews suggests to her a few times that maybe a teenager hit Starkey Swinson with a car, put his body in a truck, and then buried him up north. Claire also agrees with the defense that John Andrews has, on many previous occasions, been very upset about Claire's relationship with Starkey Swinson, but never threatened him or ever assaulted him. Obviously, this is brought up in order to inspire some doubt that Andrews was the kind of person who would commit the murder that he's accused of. If he had repeatedly been angry about Swinson in the past, what was so new about the night of August 13, 1983? Finally, Claire Andrews says that she didn't think that John Andrews would have been able to pick Starkey Swinson out of a group of 10 people. Claire said that she had no firsthand knowledge that Swinson and John Andrews had ever been seen together before Swinson's disappearance.
Okay, so Claire's story doesn't quite match up with her previously published statements. In earlier testimony, we know that Claire said John Andrews confronted her after finding her with Swinson on a couple of occasions. In the preliminary hearings, she said that John Andrews was livid after finding her in Watoma following a rendezvous with Starkey shortly after her divorce was filed in 1983. There was another time, too, where Claire Andrews told police John apparently followed her to one of her frequent meetings with Starkey in Oshkosh, and then accosted her after Swinson dropped her at her car.
Plus, we can't forget that according to Suzanne Eggert, John Andrews knew exactly where Starkey Swinson lived, and even pointed the house out to Eggert while he mentioned that he wanted to kill Swinson.
Yeah, I don't buy her claim that Andrews couldn't have recognized Swinson and that he'd never seen him. It just doesn't fit with all her other statements. One other interesting aspect of the new testimony, this time from Eggert, was that the defense attorneys highlighted that there wasn't any corroborating evidence to back up her testimony. They also point out that each time she talked to the police, she added more information, which they thought was strange.
When it comes to the corroborating evidence, the broken bike parts and the gouges in the parking lot and grass, as well as the broken tree, do seem to back up her accounts of the events in the grassy alcove, at least to me.
Yeah, I agree.
The defense attorneys also really worked hard to paint Suzanne Eggert as an unreliable witness. They question why she waited 10 years to tell police this pivotal information. Just like in her earlier statements, she said she feared for her and her children's safety based on Andrews' threats, and that kept her from coming forward, at least initially. Eggert said that after living out of state for a while, and especially since her daughters had grown and married, she felt safe enough to talk to the police. She also said that she hoped other possible witnesses would come forward and break the case back in the 1980s, but that never happened. The defense also point out that Eggert continues to see John Andrews after August 13, 1983. At one point, she even told Andrews that she knew he killed Swinson and that she was going to go to the police. The defense even got her to admit that after saying that, Andrews didn't attack her and didn't try to stop her from going to the authorities. Eggert is by no means the perfect witness. It really comes down to how you take her stories in the balance and how you view the strength of the corroboration of the bicycle parts and the gouges in the parking lot.
The prosecutors did seek to bolster Eggert's testimony. They brought in Carl Staffold, the janitor at Shattuck Junior High who found the bike parts, and he was able to talk about how the bike parts and the gouge marks did back up her testimony. He also mentioned seeing tire tracks in the alcove, which is an independent source backing up what Eggert said happened.
Yeah, and the neighbors of Claire Andrews actually also testified in the trial to say that they saw a man on a bicycle on the night of August 13, 1983, pull into Claire's driveway, and then that bicycle rider left to go over to Shattuck Junior High's parking lot. To me, that's some important corroborating testimony.
For the prosecution, even though they scored a big win with those testimonies, they had to suffer through the fact that Ron Doro, the lead detective in the case, took the stand and was forced to admit that none of the evidence they sent to the state crime lab was of any use to them. To quote Doro directly, they found nothing at all, end quote.
Yeah, that's the truth. Doro actually walked the jury through some of the work and described that even though technicians carefully processed Andrew's car and the pavement from the school, They never found a single hair from Swenson or any blood at all. Even the bright red paint found in the gouged pavement wasn't consistent with bike paint. After examining Andrew's car, they found many scrapes on the bottom, but according to Doro, the examination concluded that they were numerous because the car simply sat low to the ground.
There were some other interesting small bits of testimony. When Carl Staffold, the janitor at Shattuck Junior High, took the stand, he mentioned that he found a nearly complete, damaged, 3-speed rust-red bicycle next to the small 3-foot tree. A pedal from the bicycle, he said, had broken off, which was found by the long gouge mark at the entrance to the alcove. This is interesting as it's a bit different than what Staffold had originally told police, which was simply that he found bicycle parts. The bike next to the tree had its front wheel broken off, and the wheel's spokes and rim were bent and broken. Darlene Jeske, a neighbor of Andrews at the time of Swenson's disappearance, also testified that even though John Andrews was normally friendly, on August 14, the day after the murder, he seemed unusually irritated and edgy. She also said that she saw him thoroughly cleaning the car's interior and trunk. According to her testimony, she said Andrews told her that he was cleaning his car because the day prior he had loaned it to a friend to haul chickens.
All right, so this is a problem. He had told police initially in the John Doe trial that he didn't clean his car on August 14th. Then he eventually changed his mind to say that he cleaned his car because he had picked up a hitchhiker who had dog poop on his foot. So it's clear that John Andrews is caught with an inconsistent story here. The issue here is if this is simply a question of faulty memory, or if he's getting caught making up his story as he goes.
Yeah, this is definitely fishy. But like a lot of this story, there are discrepancies, and it's really hard to judge their importance.
To me, it's also interesting that Andrews told somebody that he had let a friend use a Pontiac Trans Am to haul chickens around. Doesn't exactly seem like the perfect car for that kind of job. All right, so the defense ended up deciding that it wasn't in their interest to call any witnesses. Andrews decided not to testify at his own trial, and the defense rested.
And with that, it would seem that John C. Andrews' fate was headed to the jury. Except, he decided not to take that chance. Andrews decided to interrupt his trial with an Alford plea, which allowed him to continue to deny that he was at all guilty, but did acknowledge that the prosecution had a convincing enough case it might earn a conviction. Essentially, the Alford plea let Andrews bargain for a reduced sentence rather than risk his fate with a jury that was likely to convict. As part of the plea bargain, Andrews was convicted with homicide by negligent use of a motor vehicle. John C. Andrews ended up sentenced to 2 years in prison and a $10,000 fine.
Honestly, for Andrews, this move makes a lot of sense. If he risked it with the jury, he could have faced life imprisonment. In 1994, Andrews was again married and had people depending on him for their livelihood. He decided to take the option that seemed the least risky, and he probably made the right decision. Many of the jurors gave interviews to local media at the end of the trial, claiming that they thought he was guilty.
So with that, John C. Andrews heads to prison, where he serves 14 months. The trouble is, since that time, Starkey Swenson has still never been found.
A conviction and prison term definitely helped to bring some closure for Swenson's family. But for law enforcement in Winnebago County, the idea that there's still a missing body out there isn't a pleasant thought. Unfortunately, it appeared that there was nothing that could be done. However, that all changed recently when a landowner near Omro, Wisconsin contacted the Neenah Police Department with information suggesting that John Andrews buried Starkey Swenson on their land. Join us on the next episode when we interview that landowner that helped provide a new break in the case and clues that point us in the direction of where we should begin our search for Starkey Swenson.
If you want to know more about the Starkey Swenson story, we highly recommend you visit our website or follow our social media channels on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube for additional information, behind-the-scenes footage, and more. We will continue to post insider content and updates as this real-time investigation progresses. You can find our social media pages using the links on our website or by searching for us on our social media platforms. We'd like to take a moment to thank those who helped us compile information on this case, including the Winnebago County Sheriff's Department, newspapers.com, and individual citizens who've shared their knowledge. Our theme music was created by Mario Cole 06 and is available for download from Pixabay.